Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles, your favorite true crime podcast. I am Donnie, and with me is a man that says if he could use the force, he'd use it to open beer bottles. It's Dale.
Hey, yeah, that'd be the easy way to do it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever. Give me a sound effect there, Donnie.
Get you
Oh, man, it's been a rough week.
A lightsaber.
It's been a rough week.
A
yeah,
lightsaber,
there you go.
lightsaber
Just pop on
sound
top of the top
sound
off.
effect, yeah. Let's say it's been a rough week for you, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been rough. I've been sick, but my wife took a terrible fall, and she's broke her shoulder pretty bad, and trying to take care of her and being sick, and it's just been rough. But, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, but we're praying for her. Hope she gets better. I know she's got to have some surgery coming up.
Yeah, next week.
Man.
By the time you hear this, well, it'll be the day after this comes out, so it'll be next week sometime. But he said that go ahead and not sugarcoat it. It is bad. It's going to be a rough surgery, and it's going to take a while. So,
but it is doable, right?
We're trying to be prepared for that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
There's
he said he thinks he can do it.
Okay. Well, that's the good thing.
It's a really bad fracture. It really is. So, but Kim, we're praying for you, and we hope everything comes out good.
Exactly.
And, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, that's it, man. We just have all of our listeners keep you in our thoughts and prayers, man.
I appreciate you, man.
You got any good shout outs? Anybody you want to talk about before we get going?
Oh yeah, we got how about that?
Oh man.
All right. First, I'd like to give a shout out to Loopy Newhouse, who hooked me and my daughter up with some Iron Maiden tickets to go the other night. So we did have one of Kim's friends come over and sit with her and let us go to the concert and get a night out and come back. So I appreciate that, Loopy. Thanks a lot. But also, get back to business. We have a brand new Apple 5-star podcast review here, and this comes from Haley Roop, and it says 10 stars.
10?
Yeah, so man, you got to do a whole lot of stuff.
I got to do 10 stars.
Yeah, there you go. And it says, hey, y'all, I can't say enough about your podcast. I've been listening since before you've even had sponsors, commercials. That's what she said, not me. Anyway, I'm a local, born and raised in Shelby. Currently, I put down roots in Ballstick, North Carolina. Ooh, that's up there near the good stuff. Up there at, Green Acres and all that good stuff. Anyway, where it used to be Green Acres. I tell everyone about the podcast, and they're so intrigued by the name that they quickly check it out and then, of course, become avid listeners. That's awesome, isn't it?
It is.
So keep doing what you do, and please give us more H Degree updates as soon as you get them. I'll be ordering my sweatshirt soon. So thank you so much, Haley, for taking the time to do that, and we appreciate you, and being local means a lot, because that's great for us, and, you know, trying to keep the Aisha thing going, and anytime we get stuff, we pass it on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we appreciate everybody that listens, and especially the local listeners or anybody across the country, across the world that listen to us, because that means a lot.
It does.
It really does. If anybody else wants to be like Haley Roop and go to Apple Podcast and leave a 5-star rate and review, you can, and click that purple subscribe button while you're there. That helps too.
Yeah, it does.
It helps that algorithm and pushes on up to the top of the charts.
That's right.
It does, man. And if anybody wants to go to the store page, get you something cool to wear, get
like
you
a sweatshirt,
get you a hoodie, get you a long sleeve t-shirt, get you a cap, something, get you a mug,
brand new coffee mug.
Yeah, some hot chocolate put in it,
yeah,
or something else to keep you warm, whatever you need.
Whatever hot toddy you're taking in that day.
Yeah, whatever's making you feel good that day.
There you go.
That's it. We appreciate that a whole bunch. All right, Dale, after this short break, we got a good episode, man.
Good. That's an understatement.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, Dale, we're back. And, you know, on episode 118,
yes,
we covered the Tylenol Murders.
Yeah, we did.
This was in late September of 1982.
Right.
And we said in that episode, we cannot stress this enough, that this was a pivotal moment, not only in U.S. history, but world history, man. Can't even be compared to 9/11, the events of 9/11. This was major, man.
Yeah, changed the world, actually.
It did. It changed the way pharmaceuticals were manufactured.
Every product in the store, pretty much.
Yes.
It changed it all.
It changed everything. Everything. And what's crazy is this Tylenol Murders, there were so many people affected by this at that time. And today on the show, we have Michelle Rosen. She is the daughter of Mary Reiner. Mary was a victim of the Tylenol Murders, and Michelle was 8 years old when this happened. And so we are pleased
and privileged,
yes, to have Michelle on the show to tell us her side of things, tell us what happened that day and before that, and to walk us through this a little bit. And she's done a lot of investigating on this. A lot.
That's an understatement.
Yes. So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're pleased to have you. We're privileged to have you.
Yes.
So just
And I usually don't do these. I usually do not do these because it's frustrating with the stories that are out there that normally I don't follow up and I don't correct and I don't, ask, would you like to know what I have found in my investigation? So I absolutely appreciate and thank you very much for being open to having an episode that has information that to no fault of yours, but to allow me to come on and correct what I've learned in my solid 17 years of research, but, obviously my whole life looking into this.
Yeah, we covered this, and you reached out to us, and you so graciously pointed out some of the things that are misconstrued in this story from 1982 that's out there in the media that people are reporting on that are just complete fabrications or untruths.
Misinformation,
yeah, misinformation. So
yes, this is 100%. The official narrative is 100% copy pasted. No matter who's saying it, no matter who's doing it, even the most accredited investigative journalists, I'm going to put that in light quotes there, that don't look into what really happened. And everything you read in 42 years, none of it is true except for after 42 years, we know 7 people took Tylenol and they died. Everything else, write it all off.
Wow. So let's go back to September of 1982. What was going on for you when your mom came home from the hospital? She'd just given birth to her 4th child. What was going on that day?
I had just come in from school. My dad had picked us up from school, and we walked into, my grandma came to visit, to help my mom with the baby, and we had just come in from school and saw my mom was already saying, I feel weird. And she was coming out of the bathroom. I was in the kitchen. My dad's there, and my grandma's holding the baby. And she said that, she was just breathing very strangely. Her eyes were wide. Everything was happening. And my grandma told her to sit down on the chair and breathe, and she couldn't. So, I experienced watching the convulsions, the seizure, whatever, and she hit the floor. At that point, my dad called 911 and, sent me upstairs with the dog to go upstairs and wait, obviously. And I just saw the ambulances come up and all the commotion downstairs. And by the end of it all, I didn't know it yet. We didn't know it yet. She was gone. This only takes a couple of minutes. She was gone. So went to the hospital. Now the reports say that she died the next day, but that's only because my dad kept her on the life support just for any chance at all that anything could be revived. And he had turned off the support system at 9:03 the next morning.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry about that.
So you and I talked on the phone the other day, and you'd said something about the days leading up to this, the day before your mom died.
Yes, the most important thing, which I think holds the key in what is about to happen the next day. So September 28th, 1982, Tuesday at 2:32 a.m. This event that I would like to explain is, I believe, the key to what is about to happen to 7 healthy people in 14 hours the next day on Wednesday. So it's Elgin, Illinois. That's about 38 miles west of Chicago. And 2 deputy sheriffs are taking their break. They're on the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. And it's Kane County. Kane County deputy sheriffs pull up to go and have their dinner, breakfast, whatever you call it, at that time. And it's 2:30 in the morning, and they pull up to this parking lot. Howard Johnson's back then used to be, a restaurant as well, restaurant, bar, and motel. So they pull up to have their diner break, and they see boxes and distribution boxes of extra-strength Tylenol, a few of those, I think 2, and they were inside of them is 12 six-packs of extra-strength Tylenol. But One of the boxes was open. Other ones are skewed, but there's capsules everywhere, bottles, and a pile of powder.
Whoa.
One of the deputies went down to examine, why are these capsules here? What's going on? And not to blame them at all. They're assuming in this parking lot off the highway, this went to them as drug dealers using maybe the acetaminophen as filler maybe for cocaine or some other drug, opening up the capsules to use it as filler and just discarding, the rest.
Right.
So these are there. They touch them. They go in to go eat. And the officer that actually just picked up the capsule becomes ill. They order their food. They're done. And so they left the diner immediately. Within an hour, the other deputy became very ill, vomiting, and he went home sick. He pulled over to vomit in his car. They still had no idea what they were just exposed to. These are all symptoms of exposure to cyanide. You can have these reactions, swelling, rashes, vomiting, all of this just by touching it and even breathing it, even outside. So this happens, but they don't know any of this yet. Nobody knows this is about to happen the next day. So when one was hospitalized, the other one's at home, and it's not until a couple of days later that the murders happen, the next day. Mm-hmm. The day after that is when they're discovering it. So they don't realize any of this until Thursday night. And it's Thursday night at 10 p.m. This is after the murders are being announced that he says, wait a minute. We found there was extra strength Tylenol all over this parking lot. And so they went back. Well, now it's 2 days later. They go back. The boxes are gone. There's very minimal left. The parking lot's been cleaned. There's a few capsules, and they end up collecting 31 capsules from the parking lot. And that was turned over. I do have the report from that, and nothing was ever tested. So
really?
Those are, yes. So that was ignored, and never do we hear about this story. And I think if the public heard this, you'd say, wait, how did this happen? And then I understand why it was ignored when they ran into it. I understand that they wouldn't understand that they just were exposed to cyanide. But when all of these pieces come together in the next 72 hours, why was this not looked at as a major part? Why were they there? I don't know. We don't have the documents to show what was the investigation done, and why was this not looked at as part of what is about to happen to the entire Chicago area the very next day. So that is, to me, it holds the key of what is about to happen. But because we don't have the investigative records and the documents, I don't know why those boxes were there. What were they doing there? Was that somebody ditched them out? Did somebody was somebody planning their distribution boxes going to stores?
Wow.
How were they there, and why were they there?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
Yes. And, with the deputies, said they didn't believe the capsules to be of any value, and they didn't pursue this at all. But when they did go back and they did have these, why was that not exaggerated by investigators? Like, we're really looking into this. If you look at how strong they feel, years coming up about other things, I just don't understand how that part of the story, no official interviews or coverage of the event, and still to this day, it's never been covered.
No, you just leave it out. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when one of the officers, Chavez, ended up, he has this swollen arm and vomiting and nausea and dizziness, the news did ask him, about that. And, one of the people in charge, I think it was the Attorney General, he said, oh, no, he got into an accident a couple weeks ago, and that swollen arm is probably just from that accident. So my curiosity from day one is, how were these investigators, how were these law enforcement, the people in charge of this case, how were they so adamant about knowing all the answers writing off certain things, but being so specific about others. So that's where I believe that you'll see a pattern of this throughout and even to this day, you'll see a pattern of this throughout the investigation.
So nobody else was called in on that box of pills they found? Nobody else was called in?
No, a doctor in Elgin had come across the boxes after the deputies had already left, and now they're sick, and nobody still has seen these. But a doctor had come across the boxes, picked up the boxes, and turned them into Elgin Police Department. And that's all I know of that. That was in the paper that they were turned in. What happened to those after that, I have no idea. But
Wow.
I know that the media and the public has never heard what happened to those boxes and what they found.
They probably just throw them away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they could have.
Yeah.
They could have, but you would think that being that now we're a little bit closer to the next day, that these get turned in, and what are these doing here? These were all in a parking lot. I'm not really sure, but I don't have a record that says they actually destroyed them and threw them away either. So I have an open mind that there's a document there somewhere that explains, this. And when I bring up these things today, I need listeners, I need you to have an open mind that this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not a tinfoil hat thing. These are facts that I found, and I'll be more than happy while I explain what my research has led me to. I will definitely say what I think possibly could happen, why this happened, but I will definitely point that out when I know it's not a fact. I don't have the document for that, but this is what I believe happened there. But everything else you hear from me is documented and are facts that I am just taking out of their mouths and putting it all together in my 17 years of research.
Wow. So when your mom passed away, what did they tell y'all initially had happened to her?
Her death certificate originally said brain aneurysm. And so we know that, as you know with the other victims too, we'll talk about them, that, because they were young and healthy, you didn't really know. Nobody's thinking. You remember, this is the first act of terrorism through food. You've never had product tampering. You've never had cyanide that we know of.
Yeah.
You've never seen this in history before. So no one's skeptical about how. They're not doing toxicology reports immediately. But we have, seven people, all dying. And can I just make it clear that the next day that we've got all of these 7 healthy people, this is in 14 hours. This is not in the days that the media says. That just happens to be either A, like Paula Prince is the last one on Friday, she's found, but her autopsy report was that she had died at 9 p.m., on that Wednesday, on the 29th. So we have September 29th now. So we've got the 28th where we've got these deputy sheriffs. Now we've got the 29th. We're going to start off with Mary Kellerman, age 12, at 7 a.m. Throughout that day, we're going to have 7 victims total that we know of. And so Mary Kellerman, 12 years old, at 7 a.m. And I'm going to give the hours. I'm not giving exact times here.
Okay.
Adam Janis, who went thoroughly through all of these, so I'll just say the times, though, just to make it clear that these are not days. This is all in one day.
Right.
I think we called Adam Janis. I think we called him Yanis in our episode.
Yes, Adam Janis, right. It's the Janis family.
Yes.
Adam Janis, age 27, father of 2, is at 2 p.m. and somewhere between noon and 2. And it's Mary Magdalene Reiner, but she went by Lynn. That's my mom. Mm-hmm. She is 3:30 p.m., age 27, mother of 4. Mary McFarland is next. She's 31, a mother of 2, and she's at 5 p.m. We have Teresa Janis, age 19. Now, she's married to Stanley. Teresa and Stanley are the other 2 Janices that come over after Adam had died earlier that day, and Teresa's just 19, and Stanley's 24. So they're newlyweds coming over to Adam's house, and this happens to them, and that's at 6 p.m. And then finally, Paula Prince comes in off a flight. She's a flight attendant. She comes in. She's 35, This is in Chicago, so she's the only city. She's in Chicago. She's age 35, and she comes in off a flight and, takes her Tylenol and dies. They do not find her until Friday. And so 2 days later, she's found when she didn't show up for work, and her sister was concerned and did a wellness check.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the chances that all of these, there's 7 victims between the ages of 12 and 35, all healthy. There's no old people. There's no back pain. There's no any. Everyone is taking this for a headache or a cold. And 7 healthy people die in 14 hours on the same day, all taking their first dose, beside for Mary McFarland, the 31-year-old. Beside for her, everyone died taking their first dose of Tylenol. And that's where I kind of look at this and say, the public really doesn't understand that, because they put these turning off life supports or when you're found, and they drag it out over a few days. But if you really look at this case in a way that all of this happened literally in one day,
Yeah.
one waking day, what are the chances of that? So one of my theories is was there a lot more out there that we didn't know? B, is there any other victims that we know about this because 3 people in one family died. That was the only thing that set the red flags off. My mom would have died and gone under without, any skepticism to anything except for as a brain aneurysm. And Mary Kellerman as a stroke. So you've got them, that's all coming to light a day after, 3 people in one family, and then they start putting pieces together. But it still wasn't written as all 7, all died from the Tylenol. That wasn't until 2 days later. It was like a day and a half later that they put my mom and Mary McFarland, into, hey, they took Tylenol too. So,
yeah, it could have been many more that had died, and they were just their cause of death was just mislabeled.
Yes.
Right. And I try not to go into that just because of the fact that I'm just trying to get the public to understand how this happened and all of the problems that I have with the way that this is reported in the first place. So I never want to open the door and say there probably are more, but I just wonder, all of these people are literally buying this, taking their first one and dying. Was somebody driving and taking it and they got into a car accident? Did somebody fall down the stairs? Was there an old person?
Yeah.
And all of those things that you have to start thinking about once you understand the case here in the true light that it is. It starts bringing out more and more questions. I'll just be happy with the way that the case is now. Keep our 7 victims and understand why are we still talking about this in the way that we are.
Yeah. When did your family finally find out that your mom had been poisoned with cyanide?
It was the next afternoon.
The next afternoon.
So yes, the next afternoon, and so it was. We were just thinking complications from childbirth. We were thinking that up until that time, and then we found out about it being, cyanide. So the question with my mom is, I look at as not as a sore thumb, but I look at it as a smoking gun, my mother, and I don't have the facts and the documents. I just have her coroner's report that says, from the coroner that writes right here in the report, and I found it right in front of me, and it says that they need to go back to the house. The coroner is calling the police department, and I lived in Winfield at the time. Go back to the house and collect any bottles of Tylenol, of any kind, and even Tylenol capsules that aren't in bottles. So that's what is going to lead me here. When you're reading that like that, that makes sense. Go collect anything, no matter what it's in. Let's get that. But my theory is that my mom had just come home the day before from giving birth from the hospital with her 4th child.
Mm-hmm.
When she came home, usually, and this is proven, that usually when you're coming out of the maternity ward, every mother is given a unit dose pack, a 1-day supply of extra strength Tylenol. That was actually one of Johnson & Johnson's big marketing plays. They either give it away for free, or it's pennies on the dollar that these hospitals are paying, so that way they could use that doctors use most. This is the product that doctors use most.
Right.
But these women are leaving with like a goodie bag. So you've got your formula samples, maybe some diaper things. I'm not sure exactly what was in hers, but it was protocol that that people leaving the hospital, surgeries also, too, that they leave with an 8 capsule, a unit dose pack of Tylenol, and it gets them to have it for free. It's the most expensive over-the-counter pain reliever, so you get that for free. You like it, and then you start buying it. It's a excellent marketing.
It's just a good business.
Yeah, it's promotional to
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I believe it was that packet. I believe it was that packet that contained the extra strength, the cyanide-loaded extra strength capsules, because my mom had a regular strength bottle sitting on that she had just purchased that day from the store. Regular strength. That's what my mom usually took. So I'm assuming that, and this is my theory. I'm assuming she buys the regular strength. She discovers the goodie bag, unpacking your suitcase, because remember back then, hospitals, you didn't just have a baby and leave after a day. That was a 5-day stay.
Yeah, you stayed there a while.
You packed a suitcase. So maybe she's unpacking this and decides to take the extra strength instead of the regular strength that she just bought. She takes 2, puts the rest in the regular strength bottle, because you got this little packet, and you understand what I'm talking about with that little blister pack, right? It's like a little plastic, like a little wrapper. Yeah. So I'm assuming that she, takes those 2, puts the rest in, and, immediately hits you.
Oh, man.
Wow.
And if that is true, because of these reports, the coroner's reports, and everything in my finding, not just with my mom, but with everything in my findings and my research, shows that not only was the hospital in the same distribution chain as all these other victims, but it would also prove that you cannot have a madman going store to store and putting this in, because no madman is breaking into a secured hospital pharmacy.
Correct.
Very, very true. So what was the authorities telling your family? I knew you were 8 years old at the time, but you've done a lot of research, Michelle.
Right.
What was the authorities telling you and your family the days and weeks after your mother's death?
Well, it's still the same story. They were looking into it, but by day 1 of the investigation, they were at the point of the madman going store to store. This was without a thorough investigation, you have a madman going store to store theory. And I just find that very hard to believe, how you can have such a theory, day 1. So when they're doing this investigation, they're writing off anything else. And you have a few investigators. You have a medical examiner in Chicago. You have these theories that are coming up saying, we don't think, this might not have been on the store shelves, because we're doing these cyanide tests, and they were saying, they would corrode, otherwise they had to be there, a day or 2 before. They would corrode otherwise. And well, the medical examiner, Dr. Robert Stein, thank you, Robert Stein. This is out there, even though it was never heard of again, but he did do an official test and said, we've been testing this. We're at 72 hours now. There's no corrosion. And they continued the test going, even though the media stopped talking about it, and investigators. They kept it going. And Robert Stein, they had declared that in the end, under the right circumstances, as long as it's not sitting out in humidity and there's no water being exposed to this, cyanide sitting with that acetaminophen, cyanide in the proper care actually has an indefinite shelf life under the proper situation, the elements. So we need to not think this had to have happened the day before, 2 days before, or whatever. we need to be thinking about the true facts here, and what's been told to us is that this would have been corroded, but that's absolutely not true.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I listened to our episode again this morning, and I think we've said that several times in there, that that's what they said, that it would have to be like only 2 or 3 days before, or it would eat through the caps.
Right. And that was just to keep a hold on this. See, I believe, there were 4 other Tylenol-related cyanide victims in our country, not just in Chicago, leading up to the 7 murders. We had one just in July of a 19-year-old in Wyoming in July of '82, and he had cyanide and Tylenol. We have another in April in William Pasquale in Pennsylvania. He was written off as a suicide. He had these Tylenol capsules loaded with cyanide, and he was written off as a suicide. He was a 26-year-old graduate student. He had no reason to kill himself. His family was saying, no way would he kill himself. He had no reason to kill himself. And it wasn't until, so this is April, it's not until September, when all the victims, and this is all Tylenol related, that they start looking back at these other cases. Quickly was it covered up. Quickly was it said, no, it's not related whatsoever. Just like the September 28th. Deputy, the Kane County thing. It's written off quickly, not related whatsoever, because admitting that would be that there's a problem in the distribution. So let's talk about that, if you don't mind, of why I think and how this happened.
Well, right, but
read all the reports. I'm sorry?
No, I was just going to say it doesn't even make sense about the suicide thing. If you were going to kill yourself, why would you go home and put the stuff in a pill and then take it? Well, that don't even make sense.
Yes, right. Well, I guess I don't know why you'd use a Tylenol capsule and why that would be the drug of choice to be doing that with. Why you wouldn't just drink Tylenol and water? Cyanide in water.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Take it in any form, and you'd more than likely just fondling in it without the right ventilation, even, and hazmat outfit, putting that cyanide into the capsule. You'd already have the full effects already before you even got it into the capsule.
Exactly, yes. That makes no sense. I'm sorry to step on you. I just wanted to say that.
No, I do appreciate questions like this, because this is what I think is so important. Nobody talks about this like this. These are just pointed questions that you say, okay, well, you said that, but why? Why would that happen, and why would they do this? And I think pointed questions in this way that we're talking brings up, like, the 7 healthy people in 14 hours. What are the chances of, this only having 8 bottles out there, but 7 people are dead in one day? This just does not, and all taking them out on their first dose. So they took control of that. I believe that Johnson & Johnson knew they had a problem in distribution. We've never seen a full record or report of the complex distribution chain that it is. And so let's talk about that. We've written off that this Johnson & Johnson can claim no responsibility. Why? Because all the lot numbers of the victims are made in 2 plants, not 1. So we know it wasn't happening during manufacturing. So some of the bottles are coming from Round Rock, Texas. That's one of their manufacturing plants. And some of them are coming from Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. That's their other manufacturing plants. So they have 2 plants way away from each other, and they have these different lot numbers. So we know it didn't happen in manufacturing. But what the media and Johnson & Johnson and everyone would like you to think is that those 2 manufacturing plants make theirs, bottle it, put them on little trucks, and they drive to your grocery store and put them there. It's a lot more difficult than that. Even switching up to 5 different hands of repackaging, rack jobbers, all of these different things along the way in distribution, where it's been, you've got sometimes barrels of Tylenol, sometimes bottles, but they're coming into this distribution channel in the Chicago suburbs and are being opened up again. Maybe we'll take 10 bottles out of this because we're going to deliver it to that Walgreens, we're going to bring it over here. And all of these different, all of these different hands and ways that they're going to distribute the Tylenol to get to our shelves.
So it passes through many hands before it gets to the store.
Many hands. And if the proper investigation was done, investigators, this is either a cover-up and incompetence. I believe it's both. If asking the right questions and things, but the FDA, they never announced and never did a thorough investigation of this complex distribution channel. And so let's talk about what's the difference if it happened in manufacturing or distribution, or there's a madman going store to store putting these on the store shelves. So the difference is liability. And in order to not have any liability for the victims and their families, is that if it happened when they manufacture it in distribution or anything along the way, that is fully Johnson & Johnson's responsibility up until the point somebody, once it's set on that store shelf, claim no responsibility.
Right.
So the liability would be all in Johnson & Johnson unless somebody came into the store, took that product, and did that. Well, I don't really know of lot numbers being a thing do madmen really pick lot numbers? Do we pick those? I don't, and you could spin that and say, well, he took them all off of one shelf, these 8 bottles, took them all from one store, went home, did all this, and this is why the lot numbers are matching up. But the stores that they ended up being on are all in the same distribution of that, except for my mom's regular strength, which was a completely different distribution channel. She did not get that regular strength from the same that everyone else did, but the hospital was in that distribution channel.
Wow. I just wonder if anybody else from the hospital had gotten packets that they didn't know about.
Honey, I truly believe it was about 15 years ago, and I was looking into billboards. I was thinking, how do I ask the public this? How do I ask, did you lose a loved one anytime that week, at the hospital? Did you lose a loved one? But maybe you were expecting them, to die because you are in a hospital after all. And again, this is a topic this is too much for people to grasp already. And these are just thoughts that have entered my mind and saying, I really wonder, how many people just didn't, that you were expecting someone to die or just got out of surgery or something like that, regardless of the hospital's distribution, just off the store shelf, just from buying that and purchasing it. How many people died in their sleep?
Yeah.
Wow.
Took some Tylenol and went to bed.
Yeah.
Right. And so we'll just keep it with the 7, and we'll just keep that story there beside for the 4 other suicides or others that were written off as that. But we know that these things were happening, oddly, a few times throughout the country that we know of. And I believe that Johnson & Johnson knew they had a problem in distribution. They were unwilling to correct it because they are famous for that. They're infamous for that. Their standards, their quality control, everything, that they just literally get away with everything. And they have the power to do that. So I believe they knew they had a problem in distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And a week before the murders in Chicago, they had their best lawyers that went to Chicago. This didn't even happen yet. And the 2 that would take over this case were there a week before the murders happened. So I think this was an anticipation. How or why, I really don't know. But the other thing that I cannot wrap my head around and understand, and this is what I really want those documents for. They're all sealed. The public cannot get them. I've been fighting for them for 17 years. Even till today, I'm still sending FOIAs and trying to get my information and trying to get them to unseal the documents, and not just for me. I believe that the public deserves an answer after 42 years. I don't think you're tampering with an investigation if by letting the public know actually what you have. The few pages that I do have, they're completely redacted. I call it the black highlighter, completely redacted, where you have a few bit of information, but I don't care. I want all of the records, and I want them that way. But the one thing that I found is that the lot numbers all matched up for this distribution channel. But the expiration dates on all of them, which is never talked about, and you can see it on those original archives, those original release of information, and that's where you get most of your truth from, is local and live, when everyone doesn't know what's actually happening, and these things are released they didn't have their official narrative set up yet. So, but these expiration dates are 1987 on these bottles. And I'll just tell you why that's significant. The FDA code for over-the-counter acetaminophen was 3 years. That's all the shelf life they're allowed. And as you said in your first episode, you said that all of these, they knew that it couldn't be because it wasn't corroded and they were manufactured earlier that year. So we've got these manufactured in early 1982, March and April. You've got these manufactured in early 82, but they have a 1987 expiration date. The only code of enforcement here is that the only people allowed to have a 5-year shelf life on acetaminophen is the military. Is the Department of Defense are the only people that are allowed to have a 5-year shelf life, and that's to save money, to not have to be replenishing it. So they would be getting these in stockpiles of this, but it was not expiring until 1987. So that's a good question.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
I've never even heard
So
that.
No.
is this, well, it's something that they don't want you to know, but I have the pictures, and it's funny, CNN is about to put something out this weekend on this case. I hate to even announce this at all, but it's funny that on their picture of what they're using for the advertising for this story, it has the lot number, MC2880, but the expiration is blurred out. Well,
Really?
Whoa.
I'd be happy to give you the side-by-side of the one that I have from the original. From
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
That clearly says 1987. So why are you covering that up? That doesn't make any sense because nobody's asking that question but a few of us, in the world. And do you mind if I tell you why and how all of this got started and how I know so much at this point?
Yeah, that was my next.
I have to give credit to my partner in crime, if you will. Longtime friend now, but Scott Bartson. He was a former employee of Johnson & Johnson. He was an accountant, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And after leaving the company and really realizing standards and quality and things and how they really do get away with things, he started to write the book, The Tylenol Mafia, Marketing, Murder, and Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah.
I met him just as he was writing this, but I came across his website, a couple years before that. I came across his website, and it was saying all of this about the distribution channel, which I never thought of before. And so after meeting him, I emailed him and said, hi, I'm victim's daughter, and I'd like to talk to you about how do you know all of this? And it was a match made in criminal heaven, I guess, because he had all of this inside, all of these things that he had been researching on the lot numbers and distribution. And I had my personal experience with what they did to us, court, dragging us through, never giving us any information, never hearing anything from investigators, and just being pretty much left in the dark as victims, family members, all of us. And at this point, this would be 2009. So they had raided the extortion writer's apartment, and that's all he is an extortion writer, James Lewis, and they raided his Boston, Massachusetts apartment February 4th of 2009. And it was at that point that I'd already been asking questions, but with that circus and not even telling the victims' families, you guys are going to be going through hell tomorrow, this is all going to be brought up again. I saw that, and at that point I said, I've got to do something. This cannot be real. Why are you doing this now? So it's only been since 2009 that James Lewis, the extortion writer, has been. And I think you guys do, and I'm going to compliment that. You had the best explanation of the extortion writer and why and what was on that letter. Mm-hmm. That's the best I've heard in any podcast or writing. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
For that. Good job, guys.
Thank you very much.
So
that's an honor.
His lifestyle, his connection to other crimes, all of these other things, he did all of that. And he's a grifter, and he is an extortion writer. But other than that, all of his other crimes are not connected to this case. I promise you that. And I have proof, every bit of it, that he was in New York. He left on the 4th. He never was in Chicago. He was too broke to even eat. He wasn't flying to Chicago to put this in and flying in O'Hare. That's a great story. And again, James Lewis is a very easy person to continuously blame this on, but he was not blamed really blamed, until the reactivation of this case in 2008. And so they raided that apartment in 2009. Let's get this up again. Let's start blaming him, and let's really focus. Mm-hmm. And the reason I believe that they picked him was they needed to reactivate the case because the 25-year FOIA law was coming into effect. So 25 years after a murder case goes cold, you're required to unseal the documents. I had been asking for them. Scott had been asking for them. And because of that, asking for them, if you reactivate the case, they could be sealed for another 25 years, and they could still keep those documents from the public. I truly believe that is why James Lewis is our guy today. Again, he opened that door for himself. He did write an extortion letter that he had no monetary gain for whatsoever, which thank you for pointing that out. Most people do not know that. Mm-hmm. And reactivated the case. So Scott and I really started, digging more, getting this out, and trying to get answers. And it was at that point that I thought, oh my gosh, let me go back to investigators, to the coroner, to Kane County, to Winfield. Let me try and go to these and show them what I'm finding. I'm finding all this. Did you please look into this? And I thought it would be like, oh my gosh, the top unsolved crime of the century? I thought it would be welcomed with open arms. I didn't realize how quickly they wanted to have nothing to do with my questions and nothing to do with giving me any answers whatsoever.
They were shutting the door in your face.
So they shut you down right off the bat.
Absolutely. And it's still that way. It's still that way. If you try to even ask or whatever, anything about anything, it's you again? Yeah.
Wow.
So, yes, I was just told, and I won't even name names, but I was just told by an agency about a month and a half ago, most family members don't care about these. They let it go. And you know what? You know what, sir? I'm not letting it go. And it's not that anyone wants to let it go and forget about it. No. They just don't want to pursue this because of the headache that this has caused and the hell that you have created for the families, completely disregarding anything and doing a superior job protecting Johnson & Johnson and their own incompetence in this horrible investigation. So starting with that, the horrible investigation all starts with when we discover it is Tylenol, when we discover these people are dying because of that, and then the chaos begins, the paranoia, the absolute craziness that's happening in Chicago. Everyone is dumping this down their toilets. Everyone's flushing, flush it down your toilets, turn it in, do all of this. Well, first of all, one of my big, questions is how much acetaminophen and cyanide was in the water system at that time.
Yeah, really. Exactly what I was just
thinking.
thinking.
Dumping this down, really, how much was there?
Oh my God.
We're dumping it over, and here is again the most criminal part of this whole investigation, more so than the person putting this cyanide into these capsules, is that the protectors and the never treated the bottles themselves and are just going with these 7 people and their bottles about protecting the rest of the public by saying, do not flush this down the toilet, which again, this never happened before. So I understand you're not really realizing that it's all criminal evidence. I understand that. Somebody wanting to get this out of my house right now, I don't know if it's poisoned. So, but they collected what they did collect. All the bottles were told to, be collected, to bring it to your police department. All of the police, everything pulled off the store shelves, all of the stores, all of these things throughout Chicagoland are all collected, and they are all turned over to Johnson & Johnson. And they had a lab in Lamont, Illinois, and a factory. They had baby products and things that were made there. But Chicago was huge for Johnson & Johnson.
Well, let me ask you this: did they ever say how many other bottles they collected possibly had cyanide in them? Did they report that?
as far as on the store shelves,
Yes, they
we know of two. So we know that the 5, because even though there's 7 victims, there's 5 bottles. 3 in one family died, so there's 5 bottles there. They found 2 other tainted bottles in Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg. So there's 2 other tainted bottles there, same distribution as well. And then there is an 8th bottle that is turned in weeks later after the murders by a Wheaton judge's wife, which I believe is a plant, but it's turned in weeks later, and so we actually have 8 bottles. 7 people dead, 8 bottles on one day. Chances of that, I think, are pretty slim. So we don't know, besides for those 2 that were sitting on the store shelf that were tested and found. But when Johnson & Johnson took these millions and millions of bottles, which they tested just between 1% and 2%, and all the rest were destroyed.
So you saying
so they
that
got rid of all of this? That's it.
Right. You're saying that they pretty much let them police themselves. They took it all back to them and said, "Let us know what you find."
Yes.
What
yes.
the?
And so, what I like to say is if you were the murderer, if you were the person, if you were in any crime, if the investigators gave it up to you to decide, you're the robber, could you go take inventory of that house for me, please?
Right.
Would you turn yourself in? No.
Right.
And
we found this gun. Is this the murder weapon? The gun that was used? Can you check it out for us? No, I don't believe it was. Okay, cool. What the heck?
I mean, it's ludicrous. That is criminal. So now we have what happened there is with the FBI. And by the way, because which you mentioned in your episode, that the FBI did not have jurisdiction over this case at all. It was product tampering was a misdemeanor, which you have to get back into 1982, just like you do with social media, and we couldn't tweet and this information wasn't going around, but also get back in the 1982 mindset that, as we know, product tampering had never happened before. So it was a misdemeanor, and no one could even think and contemplate of taking a product and randomly killing people that you don't even know. So it was a misdemeanor. So FBI did not have any jurisdiction on this case. This should have been left in each of these little towns in the suburbs that it happened, and then the one in Chicago. If it would have been left up to that, I truly believe we would have had an answer within the month. I would even go with a couple of weeks of even understanding exactly how this happened, because these towns, even though influenced county-wise politics, things like that, probably would have played a role in that big time. But they wouldn't have corporate interest. And the FBI and the FDA definitely have corporate interest. And getting that official narrative together and blasting this out and making this the biggest case that we've ever seen, more coverage. It's 9/11, pre-9/11 is the first act of terrorism. But the world had never seen coverage like this since 19 years before with the JFK assassination. So when it topped that, that was it. So it's being covered. And so why would the FDA and the FBI step in right away? Day one. Why would you do that? Why would you take this from these towns and do this day one of the investigation? Well, a little bit about the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. James Burke, he came in 79. There's a lot of buddies. But he was his family is a media empire. So his brother, his nephews, we're talking ABC, NBC, everything from capital cities, ABC television stations, Time Magazine, sitting on the board of the Washington Post. So you have a lot of media connections there. And our FDA commissioner at the time, Arthur Hayes, Jr., his dad was the president of CBS Radio. He was the commissioner from 1981 to 1983, a very short time, to be a commissioner. And day one, it was Friday, so day two, he is already unofficially announcing that J&J has no role in this. That they're fine. Everything's good. This is not Johnson & Johnson's fault.
Oh.
And within 3 weeks of the crime, Nothing is thoroughly investigated, and FDA officially exonerates Johnson & Johnson of any wrongdoing whatsoever. 3 weeks. You could not possibly do an investigation on one plant or one thing at all. And in all of this time, they never once allowed the public and never once showed the chain of distribution. It was, these were in 2 different plants. This couldn't have happened this way. And the FDA at the time, not until 1997, was not even, they didn't even need to see anything over-the-counter drugs. They didn't need to have complaints, any consumer complaints about an over-the-counter drug. The FDA didn't even need to know about these things. So do you think these companies are going to be reporting it? So that wasn't until 1997. And what comes out there, before this, our families are all suing. We're trying to get wrongful death suits and things. And what was about to come out in that trial, and that's why they settled, was that there were 300 mix-ups we know just with extra-strength Tylenol leading up to the murders. And when I say mix-ups, that's what they call them, but it had anything from metal flakes, even fingernails,
Wow.
and things in these bottles, and the FDA is exonerating them because they knew nothing about these 300, but that was all going to come out in the trial. That was all going to come out with the victims' family members suing, and Johnson & Johnson was not going to allow this information in the public to hear this in open record. They've been very cozy, and this is 1991 that we settled. Had a very cozy, happy place with all the media spewing their lies, catering to them, and having this PR megalomaniacs that they are. They are not a product company. They are PR megalomaniacs is what they are. And that's why you see we are the gold standard of crisis management.
Well, let me ask you this. The other family victims, I know you've talked to them. What are they saying about all this in your research?
I think I'm going to leave that private just because if they wanted to say it, they would. But I will say that I absolutely have the most respect for whichever approach you want to take to this case. But I think that everyone is happy, including in my own family, with private lives and do not want to speak out because just remember, everything that you hear, it doesn't mean that they know, everyone knows all of these things. But the circus that is made of this case has created victims' family members to ignore and avoid anything they can with this topic because, again, we've not been talked to, informed, given any information about the next step, anything beside for, I can't tell you that is my answer that I get every time. As an active investigation, I cannot tell you that, really. So, pardon my sarcasm there, but it does get frustrating.
I understand.
Yeah.
But when something does come out, like, how about the Unabomber? May 19th, 2011. How about that?
Yeah, he was considered a suspect at one time.
Oh, my gosh. But it's not until 2011. Scott and I are working on the book. This is going to be coming out. I'm asking questions. I'm digging. I'm all over the place just trying to get as much as I can. And now you're going to say you're going to test fingerprints in 2011 of the Unabomber. And I will say Unabomber did live. It grew up in Lombard, Illinois, which one of our victims did. There's a lot of serial killers that come out of the Chicago area.
Yeah, true.
But John Wayne Gacy, anyone? It's incompetence. I thought it was something in the water or the air, but then I realized I think it's incompetence of law enforcement and being able to pick up on it. I think there's just as many murders everywhere, but I think serial killers are more prominent because they realize they can get away with it. Sorry about that, but I that might be one of the things. But the Unabomber, bringing things like that up, how you're testing for DNA, how you are testing for fingerprints at this point makes zero sense whatsoever, as in 1982, we did not have, DNA testing. All of these bottles, and remember, these are not only on the store shelves and packed and racked and rung up and everyone's touching them, when they were even recalled and pulled, this is all barehanded workers. There was no such thing as protecting yourself. Nobody thought of that as far as DNA. That was not a thing yet. So to sit around with one bottle and keep trying to pull DNA from things makes zero sense to me.
Yeah,
Wow.
for sure.
So
It's an excuse to continue dragging it out as long that we still have zero answers.
So let me ask you this. After all this happened in 1982, how often did the authorities get in touch with you and your family? I'm sure it was in the beginning they did, but did it wane off and then they just stopped completely? How did that go about?
None. After 2 weeks, FBI had the authority, and after 2 weeks, maybe you're talking to your little local policeman, but nobody, FBI took over this investigation immediately, and I'll just speak for my family and of those that I have spoken to, that nobody has ever been in touch.
Really?
Oh, God.
We were told so a few family members, but my dad particularly, that's what I know for a fact, is, so I think I had I would like to say that Scott's work and my weight on this case, and constantly saying that FBI doesn't have jurisdiction, they did turn over all the files, and a call was made to victims' family members, but it was never followed up with. And I believe that would have been the information that was about to be given. But I believe it was the anniversary 2013. Don't quote me on that one, but the exact date of that. I'm usually really good with my dates, but I believe it was the anniversary of 2013. Some victims' family members, my dad being one of them, received a phone call from the FBI and said that they had important information about the case. And when asked about confirming those appointments, no call was ever made back, no appointments were ever made, and nobody got any information. But what did happen on the anniversary was that FBI had announced that they were stepping down. They would still help, but they are giving all the files, and everything would be sitting at Arlington Heights Police Department. So they're giving this back to the suburbs. But it's all going to be housed at Arlington Heights Police Department. That's where 3 of our victims are. And I said, okay, great. I'll call them, because now, I don't have the gut. They might feel some pressure, and maybe public, pressure to give that up. I think what happened there is not only were all the files, I believe the redactions probably well happened before they got them, but it appears to me at this point, 11 years later after that, that I'm still trying all of the time to get these files, is that they were well groomed for this position, and they are not giving up anything. So I have a few FOIAs that I have sent, and I get the response denied, unduly burdensome. So it's just too burdensome for them to look through these files and give me things. I tried specifically asking for one thing, specifically asking for 2 things, and then I just said, well, hey, I just want all the investigation for the first 2 months. Just give me the first, everything I need is probably right there in that. You don't have to give me the 1 million pages that you've got all the way up until 2024. Unduly burdensome. So it takes them too long to search for one specific word. Okay, well then give me whatever you find.
Yeah,
Send
really.
me anything. Have not received. So I'm working on that. Someday, I think the pressure, I think you can only do that for so long. And I think with the energy that I have for this, I'm not stopping. I don't care how many times you tell me no.
Good for you.
I'm not stopping, and I never will.
Well, let me get into this. You mentioned conspiracy theories early, and we don't usually get into conspiracy theories, but you'd mentioned something to me on the phone the other day about the turnaround time Johnson & Johnson had when they rebranded their packaging.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. That should have been in the beginning, yes?
Yeah.
So
it was like a 5-week turnaround,
Johnson, Yes. So you've got murders happen, product tampering never happened before. And November 11th of 1982, this rollout, this big campaign, Johnson & Johnson, we are saving you, public. We are putting out this new tamper-resistant packaging, triple-sealed packaging. We're going to put this out, and now you guys can all feel safe. Well, that's where their market share jumped up, because they beat everyone to the punch. But how? How did they do that? What are the chances that you have the murder's happening on September 29th. You're discovering all of this and understanding you're responsible by October 1st. And by November 11th, you have the concept of a safety seal, because how would you protect this product? How do we keep people out of this? What do? You come up with whether it's the shrink wrap or the plastic that you say you need pliers to remove, right?
Yeah.
You've got all of these things, and they're basically still the same as they were back then. You're going to rebox, you're going to hot glue, you're going to have everything so triple, and the foil. How did you come up with the materials to even think of this concept? Have it, make the machines that would put that on. How long would that take to create a machine that adds to your line of bottling? You've made a machine, so the CDC part of it, or I'm sorry, CNC, whatever the machinery makers are called.
CMC, yeah.
Putting that on, adding that to your assembly line, if you will, or your bottling process. Having this full rollout and implementation on these shelves by November 11th, on the shelves, full implementation, from concept to implementation by November 11th.
5 weeks.
And all of your advertising, too. And your market share is jumping up. All of these things, and you're beating everyone else to it. That is why I believe they knew they had a problem before. They had all of these things ready. And again, I'm saying I believe. I don't have that fact. I don't have these files. I don't have this investigation. I don't see what was going on in these interviews and finding these things out. But I do believe with the set lawyers before this even happened in the Chicago area, the other deaths that did happen that were reported before the cyanide murders, the actual ones as suicide, I believe that they knew they had a problem, and they were willing to allow the American people to be disposable commodities until they actually had to get busted for it. Would this have kept going if we didn't have the 3 Janus members in one day? Would this have kept going? I don't know.
Right. That was the only big flag that popped up that made them have to look.
And then you have 1986. So now you've got those. So now we're fully implemented. We've got triple sealed packaging. And 1986, Bronxville, New York, Diane Ellsroth, a beautiful 23-year-old girl that takes extra-strength Tylenol. She dies of cyanide poisoning.
Wow.
They check it out. They check the areas, and they find another bottle with triple seal packaging, unopened, not at all tainted with from the outside. And there's tainted capsules inside. So the FBI x-rays this. They check it. There is no way that this box was tampered with. But then once they realized what they had discovered, they said, oh, yeah, Johnson & Johnson, oh, my goodness, whoever this person is brought it home, hot glue gun, shrink wrap, and that was already proven with the x-rays and things that there was another tainted bottle. So
it had to come from the manufacturer.
Yes, or distribution. Distribution, is where, I'm going, but, why is that? And so you have to kind of put all of this as a whole and say, the documents are still sealed. We've got this official narrative of a very simple story. 7 people died. We don't know why. We don't know how, but it's probably the extortion writer. Mm-hmm. And that's all we have today. And this story is told over and over again, parroted beyond belief. It's frustrating. And this copy-paste of how this happened.
I
and
can't
we
even
still
imagine.
go back. And we go back to the FBI agent like Roy Lane, who still talks today, and blaming, James Lewis. He set up a sting operation to get him to say, oh, yeah, write a book and, tell everyone. It's nonsense. But do we really want to trust the agency, the FBI, who never had jurisdiction in the first place and took it, and the FDA, who exonerated these people, but the FBI, who didn't have jurisdiction, who allowed the liable corporation, handed over all of this evidence to allow them to destroy, we'll never know what was in there. And to this day, we're going to listen to what they have to say about this case? I don't.
Wow.
I don't trust a word that comes out. When you hand it over, this is the biggest obstruction of justice of any case known. This is the largest case of destruction of evidence ever in U.S. history. It's the biggest drug warning in U.S. history. And it's the first act of terrorism. And this is where we are 42 years later. It's probably an extortion writer because he's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, forget the chopped up bodies or whatever else. I mean, like I said to you, I said just because Ted Bundy was a serial rapist doesn't mean anything that had anything to do with him or he drove through a town doesn't mean you're guilty. James Lewis is not our guy. I know that, and I will say that forever and ever. Who it is, I have no idea. I had a couple, there's some great suspects out there, but can never be proven without documents, without a proper investigation. And again, all of the evidence was destroyed. So I have no respect whatsoever for the FBI or the FDA allowing this to happen in the first place, regardless of whether or not it happened before. And out of paranoia, I understand the dumping it down your toilets. I understand the pulling it from the shelves, throw it away. I completely understand that part of it. But you seem to have a grasp on this within 2 days. You're exonerating the company. You never did anything to thoroughly investigate that, and you allowed them to take all of this. And Chicago and the areas, we found 2 other bottles in Schaumburg. So Chicago finds 2, but J&J, after all the whatever, however many they tested, the 1% or so, destroying it, ironically, they didn't find any.
Wow.
So Johnson & Johnson is not the gold standard of crisis management. If that's one thing I can also do, besides, my goal is to get the documents unsealed, but I want a solved case. I don't want a closed case, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't want you to just say this guy was it and make everybody, like that we're closing this down. I want a solved case and not a closed case. I want the documents unsealed because I believe not just me and victims' family members, but I believe the American consumer. This case affects every American consumer, and not just with the safety seal on how every product has to have it. But if this happens the way that my research is pointing it to happen, that means that this could happen anywhere, in any product at any time.
Yeah, you can seal it up all you want, but if it's already in there, it doesn't matter.
It's already in there.
Wow.
So,
Michelle, do you mind talking? Do you mind talking about the settlement that Johnson & Johnson made with you and your family?
I'll go with this. For 9 years, with a wrongful death, so 1982 it happened. In 1991, 9 years and 8 children that were left behind. We lost 3 parents in this, the 12-year-old girl, and the young couple, and Paula Prince, the 35-year-old. But there were 3 parents, that died here. And so you have 8 children that now are without their parents. For 9 years, the victims' family members fought for a wrongful death suit, and Johnson & Johnson's pretty famous for this. They drag it out as long as possible, and that's what happened here. And in 1991, the victims' family members were going to trial, and 1 week before trial, Johnson & Johnson settled. And what is in the media, they like to put that $40 million is what the victims' families were paid. I've read that more than once. That is nowhere anywhere near, under, a couple $100,000 is what they give up. And I understand when you guys were putting this first episode out, you're like, oh, that was nice of them. They really didn't have to. But regardless of your wrongdoing, it would have been millions anyway. I'm very happy to know that our family did not receive but pennies. I'm very grateful for that, because that way there would never be, with what I'm doing now and really trying to get an answer, that anyone could really say that, anything is about money, because that is not, it at all. Even if there was a lawsuit today, I would never accept any part of anything from Johnson & Johnson. And and Johnson & Johnson is famous for, and I keep saying that, I'm sorry, but they have a habit of, how about that?
Yeah.
When you do settle with them, and all of these victims with the talc powder and baby products and everybody else that they kill with all of their products and literally get away with it, the settlements those numbers that you see are what they put out. If you sign a check from and a settlement with Johnson & Johnson, they seal all of the court documents. They get that. I'm not sure why they get that privilege, but in their contract with you, when they're paying you, you say you can never say what was disclosed. You can never say what you received. I have no problem doing it just because of the fact that I was 17 at the time, and I really don't care. I really don't care. I don't know that you want to start that up. But so the victims' family members received pennies. They're claiming a lot, and regardless of that, like I said, even if it was a big, huge settlement, I want the answers. Money is not that. So I do plan on, I hope in the future, I'm able to get my work together enough and have a really good, a well-planned team that could somehow find a case in the obstruction of justice here.
Yeah.
So whether it's the FBI along with Johnson & I'm not really sure how that would work. I don't know, that would, if it would be completely ignored. But I really would like to know, why is that never talked about? You destroyed all that. And we're still talking today about an extortion writer or fingerprints, or we're going to pull DNA and Unabomber and all of these things when nobody is talking.
Yeah, I thought I saw
about their responsibility in this.
I saw a YouTube thing that Donnie sent me, and I thought it was odd. There was a news clip with Ted Koppel, and he come on, and they were talking about this madman or maybe even a cult-like family or something. They were trying to spin it hard right off the bat, I thought.
The official narrative was set by when Thursday afternoon, because remember, the way that I'm thinking about this is that Johnson & Johnson already knew they had a problem. They already had all their high men in place. And the way that this was taken over and the things that were being announced right away told me, that was that. If you want to know every single bit of this, everything that was said in the media, if you want to know how, the CEO is Harvard roommates with the FDA commissioner, if you want to know all of these things, the Tylenol Mafia, Marketing, Murder, and Johnson & Johnson is available on Amazon. You can get it ebook or regular. Scott Bartz is the author, and that's who I was talking about earlier. So you can get that. Let me look here. I've got 500 pages, but it is 150 pages of endnotes. This is the most researched book, and you'll get more information out of this than anybody will tell you. And everything is sourced, everything is cited in this. And if it's too complicated, so this is basically what I call the encyclopedia of information. It has every single thing you can ever be. We followed when you left the FDA, when you left, whatever the revolving door was. We followed them to Johnson & Johnson. We followed their trails and followed where these people in high positions in this case ended up in the end, being at Johnson & Johnson. But if you want a weekend read, Timers, T-Y-M-U-R-S, that is the FBI code word for the case. Timers, the 1982 Tylenol Murders. It's about 150 pages, maybe 140. It has the same information as the Tylenol, or it's a trilogy. There's 3 different books, but Timers is just an easy weekend read that basically tells you everything I just told you as far as the investigation goes.
Are there links for this on your website?
I think so. So I have TylenolMurders.com. I think there is I never really go on it. I'm not an active person as far as social media, my website. That is all sitting there. Just if you come across it, you could send me an email, a tip, or a question. I love that. I get questions about, things through it. So Amazon, I believe, is on there. Tylenol Mafia, I believe, is on there. But I'm not sure that Timers is.
Timers Media is
Timers
on there.
is okay.
It says Timers Media, and then it's got a little link with you, an article, and then article 82 killings. And
okay, so that's just where the Tylenol Mafia has been mentioned. But if you go on the next one, I believe there's another chat that says about the book. So I have TylenolMurders.com, and then I'm not a Facebook user often. I just go on to see if anyone left me a message. But I do have the Tylenol Mafia page that, is about the book. And if I have a few little things like what are the chances, I have some questions, I have a patent on there. I just have little things that just, if someone were to be scrolling around and find me or find the case. I just try to have something alternative out there that isn't, the major media and the talking heads spewing exactly what Johnson & Johnson loves.
Speaking of patents and what you said, it made me think of something. Have you ever went back to see if they had a patent on some of this machinery or whatever they would have had to create to make this tamper-resistant stuff?
Well, finding I never really thought about that for the machine. But one of my first, before I met Scott, before I was in realizing that they were working, against the public, it was my husband who actually said, many years ago, 20 years ago, that said, did you ever go down to the patent office? Do you think about the patent and say, because this was still just unsolved and that's all I knew. They'll never find the guy. I really hope on his deathbed he comes forward. That was my mentality,
right,
and wasn't looking into the case really. But he's like, did you ever think to go down to the patent office and look who patented the safety seal and see if it was patented before this happened and maybe they just needed a reason to sell it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was thinking the same
what
thing.
I found?
But I also want to ask you this before you start. I want to know if this is true, did they sell it to other companies and make even more money? But go ahead and say.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything. The safety seal was not. I didn't find anything.
Nothing.
I didn't dig too deep. The first thing I found was 1 week before the murders. 1 week before the murders. Let me just say that again. And again, not accusing anybody, but a little odd that Monsanto, in a lab in Collinsville, Illinois, a scientist had patented a compressed acetaminophen tablet. So because product tampering supposedly had never happened before, and there was no need for this expensive way of compressing acetaminophen in a non-capsule form, that was just one of those things where I think it's coincidence. I do believe that is just one of those coincidences. You just happen to be in the same state. You happen to be another evil corporation, and this happened to come out. So I'm not sure, if that had any relevance whatsoever, but I sure loved the timing of it.
Yeah.
And with that happening a week before, my big question for Johnson & Johnson would be, and the FDA, is why after these murders, why were we still selling capsules? Diane Elsra would still be with us today in the Bronxville, New York gal in 1986. So why were we still allowing them to pack back up? And if you put a safety seal, regardless of what's protecting the outside, why are you still selling capsules?
Very good question.
Yeah. So, Michelle, is there anything coming down the pipe on this that you know of in the news or media?
Maybe we need to get RFK Jr. on this.
Documentaries are attempting when or where. I did do an interview, my first one. I usually decline. I get a lot of phone calls for asking for participation in mainstream media and movies or documentaries and such, or someone covering things like, if you read the Chicago Tribune, which I don't recommend you do on this case, that's what really comes up, and I decline to be a part of these things like this today unless I know you're willing to talk about everything. I don't want to control the narrative. I don't want to control and have editorial control. I just ask, can you bring up these specific questions that I have? So usually I do not participate, but I have gotten a lot of phone calls, which I have not participated in. And I say, until you're not going to be James Lewis being the extortion writer, and if you're not going to talk about the obstruction of justice here and the tampering of evidence and all of the things that we have, if you're unwilling to even just talk about a few of these things, or 1986, I just refuse to participate, because as much as I want people to be talking about this, there's no point in exploiting this story any more than it is in the copy-paste that it is at this point, unless you're going to get the public to ask that question. I didn't know that. Unless the audience is going to say that, even for one thing, just bring up one thing that doesn't make sense in this.
Right.
I just have no interest. So there is a documentary coming out. I did participate. I'm not sure where or when yet, but I guess that will be announced. Once that's in, I guess look out for it. I definitely will be talking about it, but I won't be promoting it until after I see it and understand. Okay, all of my stuff isn't on the cutting room floor, and there are some great points in here, so it's worth watching or that. And hopefully, we get these documents unsealed. I think that the public should be demanding it. I don't know how or why.
Would you think maybe you'd have a better chance now with RFK Jr. going in here? Because he seems like he don't care about Big Pharma, and he might be willing to look into this, especially if he talked to you.
I don't know. I am working with somebody. I am trying to get everything that I can. I don't think, regardless of who's in office, I really don't believe that, when you look at how many people have been in this office, it doesn't matter who's in there. It really is a very well protected. Whoever did this is very well protected, and the corporation is very well protected.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still would like to even understand these, 1987 expiration dates. I don't know who's behind this. I don't know how it happened, but I've got a hold on everything that I know doesn't make sense. I just don't know, who did this or why. And even if it was in distribution, how did they put it in there? Is there a VAT? Do you throw it in? How did this happen? I'd like to know. And I think every American consumer deserves it.
For sure.
This was a case, and I'll follow up with or finish up with that, is just remember, up until 2013, this was a case with 140 top investigators from the FBI, 140 member task force, along with everything in Illinois, the police departments in this. But this was 140 member task force that were in charge of investigating and getting answers for the public. And we still, to this day, have nothing. Except for it's probably the extortion. I will just blame him now that he died last July. We'll really put it on him now. So, so any questions, anything, you could send me a message through the website, and I'd be happy to, that. But if you're interested in getting all the information without questions, is just go ahead and read the book.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one last thing. Is there anything our listeners can do? Is there anything they can sign or go to or call to help with this, or just share it? Just share it.
I guess just put the pressure on. There's nothing like petition that could sign something. I am just pretty vocal. I just want the demand. Maybe stop listening to these same outlets that keep spewing the fact that there's nothing we could do and it's unsolved and that's it. Maybe start responding to these news media, people that are putting this out there and say, where are the documents? Why aren't we seeing the documents? Why are you not doing your job, and why aren't you saying that? I have zero respect for any media outlet so far, not putting out one thing, even with if I call and say, you're doing a piece on that, would you mind, adding this or that and whatever? And it's never in there. What they want from me is just the 8-year-old girl who came in and watched her mom die. That's all they want from me.
Well, then they get you to talk, and then they can take it all out of context and then put it where they want, and you still don't get what you want out of it. So I don't blame you for not doing it at all.
Right. I've been duped several times with, we'd like to talk to you about this in all your work and your investigation, and talk to me. They get the 8-year-old girl story and then put, get all the rest out there and do that. And I don't want to talk about that day. I don't want to talk about that day. I don't mind adding it to why I do what I do, but I don't want to talk about that day and that being me. That's my identity. My identity for this case is, yes, this tragedy happened to my mom. She's been gone for way longer than she ever lived. It's disgusting. And that's with all these parents. They've been gone for every person that died in this has been gone for way longer than they lived.
Wow.
And just to be able to, say I'm doing something about it, no matter how long it takes me, no matter what kind of stress this puts me under, no matter what it takes, you're not saying no to me anymore. I'm done with that, and it's time to get these answers from the public.
Yes.
Or to the public.
Well, I got to say, Michelle, you're a badass warrior. I mean, you are.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean,
So impressive.
yeah, the work you've done and not taking no for an answer and in your face kind of attitude. That's
and a great speaker to get your point across.
We need more people like you doing stuff and taking care of business. We really do.
Well, the fear, people say, aren't you afraid of doing this? What are they going to do to you? What? If everyone thought like that, this is exactly the kind of tactics that keep everything sealed. So let's try. It's taking me a very, very long time. I think I'm almost there. I really feel that right now in America, the public, when I first started this, no. But I think America is to the point to realize that corporations lie to you. The media lies to you even more. And they are little parrots for whatever the corporations and their advertisers want them to say, which is why you never see this anywhere else. They'll just pull their advertising. That's their threat.
Yeah.
So the media and these corporations, I think America is open to the idea, that this could have happened this way and say, yeah, but are you open enough to realize that, yes, we know that corporations lie to us. We know they get away with a lot, and their fine that they end up with is a lot less than what they made, what their revenue for that year is. So the fines are minimal to massive problems and mistakes and events. But is the government, able to continue on with this? Well, we know the FBI doesn't have to answer to anyone. They don't have anyone above that. But I really hope with these little towns and the suburbs in Chicago, I really hope as these people retire and they start saying, you know what, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to say it. Unfortunately, after 42 years, a lot of the big voices, a lot of my support and everything that I had, before and asking these questions, a lot of these people have died.
Wow.
Old investigators, and this is 42 years now. The people that I wanted to get to, the people that I wanted to ask, I know you know something about this, and, they're dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or aging, whatever, so.
Well, Michelle, we certainly appreciate you coming on and telling your story and enlightening us more and straightening us out on this because, we
Very enlightening, yeah.
We researched this. We just done what was out there and covered what had been reported. But, yeah, you've definitely opened my eyes to a different perspective on this whole story. Yeah.
Well, I really hope that it comes across as a concerned citizen and just a woman, a mother of two, that is looking to find out what happened to my mom. Because if this ever happened to my kids, I would really hope, that you don't just settle for what they tell you and say, this is what happened. So my goal is not to ruffle feathers or sound crazy that this happened, but my goal is to just let the public know, this isn't what you think. And so please stop reading this stuff and stop believing, that, because it's not true at all. And I can prove it. And if they'd like to go up against it, all I ask for them, I'm not asking you to run the finish line with me, but please prove this wrong. Prove all of what I'm saying right now. Just prove it wrong. And I tell them that all the time, and they won't do it.
Yeah.
Because they can't.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, boys. Well, it has been my absolute pleasure.
It's been our pleasure.
Sharing.
Yes.
Thank you for spending your morning with me. And, we'll see when this comes out and see, just let the public know.
We'll get all of our listeners to share it too.
Yeah, and whenever this documentary you're talking about comes out, if it comes out and you think it's good enough to let us know, and we'll have you back and promote it.
Yeah, I think it'll be decent. I don't think I'll be happy, fully happy, but I think they'll bring up some good points, and we'll have to see. But I don't know, what I can say or not about that.
Right.
But I definitely will let you know. And any other podcasters, I want to thank. Oh, can I thank the True Crime Broads for bringing this to my attention?
Please.
Okay. Yes, when I met True Crime Broads in the True Crime Podcast Festival a couple years ago in Austin, I asked and gave them a copy of the book, and I said, if you're willing to read this book, I'm willing to come on your show. Would you be open to reading this and tell me, what you think about it? Does this interest you? And we talked about it and coming on the show, and they said, hey, this Crack House Chronicles, did you hear that podcast? I said, no, I don't listen to podcasts that talk about the Tylenol murders. It just frustrates me too much. And they sent me a link, and my husband and I started listening to it immediately that night. And when I heard you asking and saying, well, Michelle Rosen has a website devoted to this, and we should reach out to her, even though it's 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I said, you know what, I am willing to call them. I am willing to set them straight. They sound like they're open to the idea, so sure. So thank you, True Crime Podcast. I'm sorry, True Crime Broads.
Yeah, Crystal and Renee.
Yeah, we love those girls.
Yes, Crystal and Renee, so thank you for that.
Yeah, they're great. They do a great job.
I'll be following up with them, too. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for the longest episode in history, here you go. All right, honey.
Hey, it was packed, and it goes by quick when it's a great subject, and you know what you're talking about, and you did a great job, and we really appreciate you coming on and being here with us.
All right. You guys have the best day ever, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
bye-bye.
bye.
All right, Dale. Man, we want to thank Michelle again.
Yes, thanks so much, Michelle, for coming on and telling the story.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what this girl's been through.
No.
Well, she's a woman now.
She's a warrior, as you said.
Yeah,
I mean,
badass warrior.
Yes.
To take this on and, I mean, take on Big Pharma, man. It's just...
and not take no for an answer.
Yeah, find out and answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, she's doing it for Mom, but she's doing all these other victims too, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
Yeah, as she said, none of it makes sense, so she's telling what really is going on.
Exactly. But yeah, I want to thank Michelle again for coming on and telling her thoughts. And
also like to thank Crystal and Renee from True Crime Broads.
Yes, those ladies are amazing.
Yes.
They're still covering the Missy Beavers case.
They are. Hope you guys are still listening.
Yeah. Every time they drop an episode, I check it out.
That's right.
We'll put a link to their podcast on this show notes too.
Yeah, that'll be great.
All right, dude, we're going to get out of here, man.
All right, let's roll.
We want everyone to be safe. Please be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is
the Crack House Chronicles.